And Sudha, we are live on Hindu Lounge number 57. I hope you can hear me. Uh, Sudha, good
Namaste,
morning.
Ajay bhai. I can hear you. Your volume is a little low. I think in between the music, kind of the volume petered off a little.
How about now?
I cannot hear you that clearly.
Hold on. Let me fix it. Are you sure it's not at your end? Let me check. Just a second. Give me a second.
Yeah, the music was playing fine.
Oh, you're
Now I
right.
can hear
You're
you.
right.
Now I can
All
hear
right. Perfect. How about now, Sudha?
you. You are loud and clear.
Loud is a good word. Namaste, Utsada, and good morning. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is Hindu Lounge, and Hindu Lounge is the live show that comes to you every week at 11 o'clock Eastern on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and a few days delayed on Tag TV. I This is by the way, Hindu Lounge is brought to you by Hindu Pact, which is the policy research and advocacy initiative of World Hindu Council of America. That is VHPA. As always, we are your co-hosts, Utsav Chakrabarti. With me, Utsada is the executive director of Hindu Pact, and I am Ajay Shah. I am the president of World Hindu Council of America, VHPA, the parent organization of Hindu Pact. And we come live every week. We talk about the contemporary American Hindu issues. And I think we are a unique show, so that we are probably the only show that week in and week out talk about just the contemporary American Hindu issues. And for people who don't know, Utsav Chakrabarti is not just the executive director of Hindu Pact, but he is, as I said last week, he is now increasingly a well-recognized, well-known Hindu intellectual in America. So, Utsada, welcome. Today, we are going to, it's an interesting topic today. There is a three-part survey that was done by, by a group of academicians and, from UPenn and from Carnegie Endowment. And the survey is called The Social Realities of Indian Americans, and the results from the 2020 Indian American Attitude Survey. So this is a three-part, they did one big survey, and we'll talk about that. And they released the results in three parts, and that covered the political spectrum, they covered the social spectrum, and in general, it's a really extensive survey, Utsada. So we'll talk about that. But first, let me turn it over to Utsada for his opening remark and to welcome everyone, and then we'll dive right into this survey and give you our analysis. Now, this survey is long enough that we might have to actually break this into two parts, Utsada, and cover one part of it today and one part at some other time, right? So with that, Utsara, welcome, and floor is yours.
Thank you, Ajay bhai. And thank you for the introduction. I always love being called an intellectual, whatever that means in today's world. It is very interesting that this survey was done. This survey was done in parts. So, last year, a piece of it was released, and it's a very extensive survey. And you have some of the most reputable institutions in America, the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the Johns Hopkins School for International Affairs, Advanced International Affairs, and UPenn, some of the top institutions in this country had contributed to this effort. And it seems to be a pretty detailed survey, as we can see. And so what we are going to do today is analyze parts of the survey. And, I say parts of it because, given Ajay bhai's own record of academic excellence and own record of being detail oriented, I can assure you that in today's conversation, if you look at the entire survey, you all will be sitting and hopefully enjoying with us for about 4 hours. So it's a, I convinced Ajay bhai to do it in parts, and I always keep reminding him to, make it shorter, because not everybody is a PhD out there, and not everybody has the ability to sit for 4 hours and analyze things. So today we are going to discuss a part of the survey, and hopefully it will be interesting to you. It is interesting for us because we always look at things anecdotally, and when we look at things anecdotally or through personal sampling, it is not always the big picture that you get, because we all have our our circles that we interact with, and as much hard as we try to look at the big picture, and some of us intuitively do it, some of us don't, it's still important to have statistical data, because that helps you figure out whether things are what you thought. Anybody who is analyzing these issues have to look at statistical data at some point. And more importantly, in today's world, we have to look at it because there are other people out there who will create fake statistical data to benefit their agendas against what we are trying to do, especially as American Hindus. As you will see later on in the survey, that there is a constant barrage of attacks and discrimination that American Hindus face. And other people have gone as far as creating fake data to justify their attacks or targeting of the American Hindu community. So that's why this survey is important. That's why this survey needs to be analyzed, broken down as detailed as possible. And I think we are going to try to do that today, Ajay bhai.
Absolutely. So that, as I said earlier, this is a rather long survey, and even the part 3 is very extensive. And we are going to go in the order of kind of what we thought was the most uh, intriguing part of the survey, and we'll start the parts that at least interested us the most as individuals, and we'll start with that, and then we'll see what are the other parts we can cover today. Also, that the first and let me bring up some slides for people to take a look at, and let me know if you can see the screen here. So that I'm just starting to share my screen now. And the first thing that kind of I want to bring up is this, how do Indian Americans, and majority of them Hindu Americans, how do they identify themselves? And so if you look at the ways that Hindus or Indians have identified themselves, are a majority, 43% of them call themselves Indian Americans, 25% of them. And now remember, this is a survey of about, what is 1900 people or something like that, on a YouGov's panel, which is an interesting way of doing a survey. It is not a probabilistic survey of randomized sample, but they have a panel, and they of people who are most likely to respond to the questions of about 1.8 million Indian Americans, and they create a panel out of this, and these are the people who are more likely to answer all the questions in a longitudinal way. So, and there's some statistical validation of this kind of panel that does the survey. It was used for the 2020 presidential elections and things like that. So there is certain amount of validation for this particular kind of survey methodology. It is not your traditional randomized survey. The margin of error on this survey is 1.8%, which is fairly low. So it is, you can think of this as a fairly legitimate survey if you believe in the methodology and if you believe in the statistics. Now, having said all that and laid that groundwork, you can see that Indian Americans is the most common identification for people who are who are of Indian origin. 25% of them call themselves Indians, just Indians. 10% call themselves South Asian Americans. This is the term, the Hindu-phobic term that the people in academics and people on the left and people are, who particularly don't like Hindus would, like to make it prevalent. 7% call themselves Asian Indians. And then the official word, the official term that the Indian government has used, which is non-resident Indians, has found traction with only 1% of the people. So then I do have my own comments on this, but I would rather hear from you. What do you think about this self-identification?
So I think, the term Indian American, having more than 43% is a is something that I have experienced myself. So if you go out and talk to people across the demographic spectrum, I think the term Indian American obviously has found a lot of support and a lot of identification, and I think that's more so because they're amongst the younger population segments, which is the segments that are new immigrants from India, uh, coming from India for school, for work, for other purposes, but they're born in India, so they use the term more significantly than those Indian Americans who are born in America. But again, that is not a surprise. The term Indian is also not a surprise. That's a term that has been commonly used. It is part of American social narrative. I think that's not a surprise. What is increasingly becoming common is the third term, which is the South Asian American. That is 10% of the population segment has started using it. That's a term that is primarily used in the younger American-born Indian American communities. And that too, this is the interesting part. And I don't know if you're going to talk about it now, but at some point we have to talk about it. That term, South Asian American, is primarily used by people who are not of Hindu origin. So that term is more commonly used amongst the Muslim of Indian origin who are in America, and amongst the Christians who are of Indian origin who are in America. They use the term overwhelmingly. Only 5% of the Hindu Americans, whether they're first generation born immigrants or whether they're born in America, use that term South Asian American. But that's also one of the reasons why that term is often used against Hindus in America, because it dilutes the Hindu identity with India. India being a Hindu majority country, probably the only large Hindu minority, not probably, actually the only large Hindu majority country in the world. So that term is very relevant. And the term non-resident Indian that is officially used in India, as well as amongst many Indian Americans, it's only 1% that uses the term. That is a surprise, because the Indian government uses that term, non-resident Indian. Many people in India use that term, NRI, non-resident Indian. And for only 1% of Americans to use it, it shows that there is a disconnect between how Indians living in India look at American Hindus, or Indian Americans, not Hindus, not just Hindus, but also, so how Indians and Indian government looks at us in America, and how our people here, either immigrants or born in America, look at themselves. So that's a very interesting. So the three surprises that come from this thing is that there is a growing amount of Muslim of Indian origin and Christians of Indian origin who use the term South Asian American, and it is pejoratively used against Hindus sometimes. Then there is a much lesser number of people who use the word non-resident Indian. The other two are not surprising. The term Indian American being used by 43% and the term Indian being used by 25%. That's not surprising.
So here is the graphic, the figure 12 in the survey, that is instructive here, because if you look at this this particular figure, it makes the point that you were making, that really the people who are foreign born, very few people who are foreign born, only 8% use the term South Asian American to describe themselves. Almost twice as many, 13% use the word, who are born and brought up in US, use the word South Asian Americans. And as to your point, if you really dig through the survey, you'll see that most of the people who are using the term South Asian American are people who are either Muslims or Christians and not Hindus. So even among second generation, most Hindus do not prefer to use the term South Asian Americans, unless some people who are completely brainwashed and through the academic institutions that we have in America, and they start using the word South Asian Americans. We have made our stand very clear, Utsada, on this show in past 56 weeks that we have been doing this, that this is the term to basically promote the de-identification of American Hindus, because you bracket Hindus with Indians and then Indians with South Asians, and there goes your Hindu identity. Now, people who are from Pakistan or people even from India, all across Indian subcontinent, they would say that I am a Muslim American, but most of the Hindus, the forces who are anti-Hindu try to say that, hey, you have a bigger identity, that is South Asian American identity, and not really Hindu or Indian identity. But when it comes to either Muslim, especially when it comes to Muslim identity, I am a Muslim American narrative is very prevalent. Uh, so it is heartening that to some extent that even after the barrage of this left wing assault on Hindu identity, most of the Hindus, call themselves, either Indian American or Indian or Asian American or Asian Indian, and they have not bought into this South Asian stuff.
So
Uh,
I
so
just
I
wanted to
mean,
say, Ajay bhai, the South Asian identity does two things. It solidifies the non-Hindu identity with a global religious identity that they possess. Whether they're Christians, they will identify as a global Christian identity. Whether they're Muslims, they will identify as a global Muslim. And then it dilutes the Hindu identity into a larger South Asian identity, which is actually, a non-religious identity, because then you include Pakistan, you include Bangladesh, you include these huge Muslim majority countries in this area. So then it becomes the Hindu identity gets lost under a larger geographical identity, whereas their own Muslim identities or their Christian identities are included in the global Muslim or Christian identity. So it's a very powerful and very easy effort to de-Hinduize the population.
and that is why Biden campaign never created a Hindu website, because they said that what's the need? We have a South Asian website, and but they did have one for Muslims, and they did have one for Jewish, and they did have one for Christians and other people, but not for Hindus. So that campaign actually bought into
So political
this
leaders buy
narrative.
into this because political leaders are looking at large numbers. They are trying to bracket as many people as possible under an identity so that they can get the maximum number of votes they can, especially if you are into identity politics, which Democrats often are more into at this point of time. So that is one of the reasons that the Biden administration during the campaign phase and even during Hillary's campaign, if you follow they prefer the term South Asian because it helps them bracket a larger number of people, voting population, into one group. And then they don't need to worry about looking at Hindus at all.
So it is also interesting that this is a sentiment that a lot of people express, that the minorities in India should identify themselves with Indianness, and if they're identifying themselves as Americans, that is one thing. But if they want to don't want to identify, if they want to identify themselves as South Asian instead of Indians, what does it say about these minorities? And when they are being questioned about their Indianness in India, doesn't it kind of play into that that narrative that is taking place in India, that, hey, look, it's not like we are trying to put a litmus test on your commitment to the country or your patriotism or any of that. But when you look at the numbers, when you see that a lot of the Indian minorities who have left India don't want to be called Indians at all, um, you know, somehow that kind of gives a certain amount of validity to the claim that is being made in India about the Indian minorities, right?
Well, Ajay bhai, there is, this is a kind of show in itself. And the topic you raised, whether, certain religious minorities will not be, tend not to be identifying with national identities. It's a show in itself. It has a history going back thousands of years. And, if I were to put it in a shorter description and explanation, I would say, no, if your belief system is a transnational belief system, if your holy places are 2000 miles away from your country that you are from, and if your philosophy, if your religious philosophy keeps on reminding you again and again that your country is just a piece of land, and your allegiance, your emotional connection, your spiritual connection is to a larger transnational identity, the chances that you will be feeling loyalty towards that piece of land, that country, is going to be less. So, it is, some people may not like to hear this, but I can say that, we can probably have a show on this, that there is enough historical evidence. There is enough social, spiritual, theological evidence to show that there will be less allegiance to national identities if your religion is going to be transnational in nature and encourages transnational movement. So that's why you will see that Muslim Americans or Christian Americans of Indian origin do not identify as Indians as much as Hindus do. They identify as South Asians, and that is expected. It's not anybody's
You mean
fault.
the Muslims because you mean the Muslim Americans, because Indian Americans, because the Christians actually, as per the survey, mostly just call themselves Americans. They don't want to identify with Indians. They just say I'm American because they think that they are in some ways in Christian land, right?
Correct. So but the tendency is going to be the same, along the
Yeah.
same lines. And this whole South Asian identity, South Asian identity originally begins with Jamaat Islami leader Maududi's concept of how he looked at the Indian subcontinent. So if you really, again, this is another separate show.
But Uchada, before you go there, I want to put that in back to, instead of history, I want to put it in a different context. I think that this is a warning sign for America, because America, from the American perspective, at some point, this may become an issue, because when the allegiances, to America as a nation, for people who have become American citizens, do they give their religion a higher, a higher identity value than to patriotism and to to Americanism? That is sometimes it's going to come back.
It will. And Ajay, this is again, this is the interesting thing about Americans and how American thought leadership thinks. America has been at that place before. America has been at the place where national identities clash with their, during the First World War, during the Second World War, even during the Spanish American wars, there were situations where Americans had to deal with their own populations that may have had allegiances to some extra territorial identity. The Japanese were interned during the Second World War. The Germans were perpetually questioned and discriminated against during the First World War and the Second World War. So German Americans, which is a huge section of the population. So America has gone through that situation. And Americans, if you talk to American thought leaders, if you go to think tanks all around, the talking heads, they feel extremely confident that they are on top of this game and they know how to deal with this. What I warn them is that they have been in the past only been dealing with population segments that have always been Christian. And for the first time, they are dealing with population segments that are Islamic in nature, and that is different from what they have dealt with in the past. But who am I to warn people, and who am I to tell people?
So that let me, I agree. But let me put you on spot. I want to, because I sometimes I generally try to surprise you a little bit, right? Because that's the fun part of the show. So look at this chart, right? Look at this chart. You can see the screen. Who do you identify with? What's your identity?
So I personally identify as a Hindu American.
But where do you fit in this chart?
I would say that I would fit into Indian American, probably the closest in this chart. But my identity would be as a Hindu American, which probably is other on there, which is the 2%.
So you are in the top 2% or bottom 2%, I guess. Well,
right, but I would, if I were given a choice between, because if somebody
this is your choice, so pick one.
Okay,
this is
I identify as an Indian American, obviously.
All right.
Because I was born in India. So what would be interesting is how my daughter identifies herself, because she's born in America and she's her one side of her family is also American, had never been to India or had anything to do with India. So that would be my daughter's, the question would be more relevant to my daughter, and that would be an interesting answer she would give. So
I just wanted your answer. I just wanted to see where you fit. So
I fit into the Indian American the most in this chart.
Okay. All right. I just thought I'll ask you.
No. It's a good question to ask.
All right. So let me now move on to the next, the next part, which is, so the the survey did a lot of the news came out about the fact that a lot of people of Indian origin, and again a majority of them Hindus, they feel that they are being discriminated against in recent times, and the number is over 50%, right? One in two feel that they have been discriminated against. And the other part of the survey, so that let me just bring up this chart so people can actually look at the perception of discrimination. So this is the chart on perception of discrimination. So this is the multiple charts in this category series. But the interesting part here is, let me see if this is yeah, let's start with this. So the majority of the people think that they were discriminated against. But the next part of the question was that who do you think is even more discriminated against than you? And 90%, so the error margin of error is about 2%, so plus minus 2%, right? 1.8%. So I think all the first four should be considered statistically equal. So the Indian Americans think that Latino Americans, the LGBTQ, the African Americans, and women in America are discriminated a lot more than people of Indian origin. In fact, 73% even think that other Asian Americans are more discriminated against than they are. So I have my own interpretation, but let me turn it over to you. And what do you think about this perception of discrimination?
So what I think about this is that most Indian Americans believe that they are privileged in America. And because they believe they are privileged in America, there is a big segment of their population that actually believes that other Americans who are, this also shows a lot about how media and public opinion making in America works. So the victimhood narrative in America is a very powerful, probably the most powerful tool of social interaction in America, which is, who is being discriminated the most. And in this chart, as you showed, most Indian Americans would fall in this category of privileged people, probably considering themselves as privileged as white people in America. And that's why the way they look at the rest of the population and in their worldview, even though interestingly they themselves feel discriminated against, but they have empathy for pretty much everybody in the population segment that is non-white. And that is reflected in that chart you said. And they do believe yeah.
But but it also is a testament to the achievements of Indian Americans. It also shows you that despite of all the hardships and difficulties, the people who came to America, they pulled themselves out of from basically nothing, right? They came to America with just a degree in their hands, the classic immigration story, or they came through family immigration in the early days, and they built up their businesses, they built up their careers, and they reached at the top of the career, and they look at it as a more as a gratefulness towards the society that gave them the opportunity, rather than harp on the discrimination and victim narrative. Or the victim narrative kind of works well when you have not achieved much through your hard work. The victim narrative is mostly a leftist, narrative, where the people who are on the left, they use this victimhood narrative to promote, sometimes genuinely, sometimes not genuinely, a particular agenda. Now, it is also true that, these segments, the African Americans, the Hispanics, the women, they all have been LGBTQ. They have all faced a lot more harsher discrimination through last couple of centuries in America, or 3 centuries in America, than Indians have faced. So I think this is a true, genuine reflection of what Indians and what Hindus feel, that relative to the others. So obviously, Hindus in America did not face slavery. Hindus in America were not discriminated against, and lynched because of their sexual orientation or because of the skin color or any other thing. Now there's subtle discrimination that must have that people are referring to, and that's why you see this 52% say, hey, I've faced discrimination. But if you look at the kind of discrimination that African Americans or Hispanics or LGBTQ community has faced, it is a lot more than what Hindus have faced in America. And that is why I think that the victimhood narrative that you're talking about is not as prominently reflected in the survey results. And I think that is actually true. And we don't need to, in my opinion, we don't need to, we don't need to claim that we have been discriminated as much as these other communities. We need to empathize with their victimhood.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying that there is no. I totally support the empathy that Hindu. In fact, it's Indian Americans have shown. In fact, that is a very powerful message that Americans, the other American communities, should look at, including politicians, because one of the accusations that Indian Americans often face in America is that they are a very insular community. They live within themselves, and in fact, that is one of the topics on which the Indian Americans are often targeted. So I think this shows that if there is any community out there that actually feels for other communities, even more so than themselves, it is the Indian American community, and that's a good marker of that.
So that let me move on to the next related question. Right? It says, have you in the last 12 months personally felt discriminated against because of any of the following reasons? 50% have said no. Okay. But 30% says they have felt discriminated against because of the color of their skin, 18% because of gender, 18% because of religion, 16% because of the country of origin, 5% on the basis of caste. Okay. So that I want to show this other statistic and have you opine on both these figures or both these survey results at the same time. This is discrimination, whether you're born in US, a second, third generation, or whether you've immigrated from outside, you're foreign born and now come to US. Here you see, Utsada, that a stark difference. 59% of foreign born have not faced personally discrimination in last 12 months, whereas only 36% of those who are born and brought up in US say that they have personally not felt discriminated. So 59% foreign born don't think they have been discriminated against. Only 36% of US born feel that in last 12 months they have not been discriminated against, which means that 64% of US born have felt discriminated against. And you can see the breakdown. It is to do in every category except country of origin. Okay. It is reflected. And I'm going to leave aside the caste for a minute because that's a longer discussion that is coming up. We will go to that next. But let's concentrate on all the other segments, starting with color of your skin. And first of all, why this discrepancy, and what do you make of these two charts and these two numbers that there is people feel a lot of discrimination based on color of the skin and gender and religion and all that. Now, gender is a much more generalized thing. It doesn't have to do with just Indian Americans. So, we can just say that is, a much more common, feeling or common, perception, threat, whatever you want to call it, across country of origin, across, across regions of India, across color of the skin, all of that, right? So we can leave that aside. But what about the rest of it?
So it points out to a couple of things that primarily there is a lot of discrimination against Indian Americans in schools and probably in early college education. And that is why you can see that more number of Indian Americans who are born in America identify that they face discrimination than those who come from India. Another issue could be that there are more number of Indian Americans who are interacting with non-Indian Americans and therefore exposing themselves to discrimination if that happens in the Indian Americans who are born in this country or who are of American origin. Indian Americans who come from India may be living or interacting with people who are of Indian origin also and born in India as well, especially if they're students. So their interaction with non-Indian Americans is less, and therefore they may face lesser discrimination. They also may have a higher threshold of what constitutes discrimination to them. They may already assume that because they are not of Indian origin or not of American origin and are not born in America and may have a different accent, they may have internalized some of the discrimination and don't even identify that as discrimination. Because they feel like, okay, I speak differently, I have a different accent, maybe what this person is doing is not even discrimination. So those are, I think, the two or three things that are relevant in this conversation. But more importantly, I think if it on the basis of religion and on the basis of skin color, I think Indian Americans do face significantly more discrimination in the school level, which means, those who are born in this country or those who come in this country as a young people, they have far more discrimination at the school and early education level.
So I think you put your finger right on the pulse here. I think one thing I do want to emphasize, and I have come across this as well, and that is a much more a generational divide. And I annotated this this particular slide at the same number figure that we were talking about, you were referring to, and I want to point out two things. The bullying in the school that a lot of the Hindu kids, a lot of the Indian kids have faced ends up being a determinant later in life as well, when people are asked this question whether they felt discriminated or not. And as someone affiliated with and as a co-founder of Hindu Students Council, I can tell you that when I dealt with second generation Hindu kids, I did hear this quite a bit. So this is not the same as the parents' experience, because when you are at a workplace, you're much more. It's a much more controlled space. There are a lot more rules of conduct that are in place, and people adhere to that a lot more. People are also more mature. They're grown up. They behave in a different way. So even if there is a discrimination, it may be more subtle. But in school, especially in middle school and high school, where kids are just fine at always looking for a reason to bully other kids, and to just the sign of immaturity, sign of all of that, right? The experiences the kids who are going to school, who have gone to school in America, who are going to school in America, is very different from the experiences that their parents have. So that this is one thing that I also think that uh, the other thing that kind of plays into this is the kind of denigration of Hindu symbols, Hindu icons, the murtis, Hindu practices, whether it is the representation of Ganesha, representation of Bhagwan Shiva, or the fact that Hindu women would wear bindis and all of that. The way that plays out rather in high school, and how other kids look at the Hindu kids and how they make a lot of times make fun of them, and a lot of times it happens in more in public space, and then it is reflected in schools as well. So all of this kind of leads the Hindu kids growing up in America to believe that they are being discriminated against on the basis of religion. Now, I don't have the full breakdown of this particular religion category, but I almost can bet you that this is a large, a lot of it is based on these kinds of, the origin is based on this kind of experiences that people have in the high schools. Um, I think I also agree with you that people who are born and brought up here are not as desensitized as the people who have come from outside, and they are more likely to kind of spot the discrimination when they see it. they're whether they do something about it or don't do something about it, at least they can spot it. And I think that that also kind of makes a difference. Um, what is interesting is, so the difference, this difference in the experiences that the parents have from the experiences that children have, that has led to a disconnect between parents and their children, the first and second generation Hindus, first and second generation Indians, to be quite pronounced. This is this disconnect is something that people who are, who are running the Hindu Sunday schools, people who are running the various other Indian organizations, they have not paid as much attention to. And I think for the long term, survival and success of the Hindu American, or rather American Hindu community, and American Indian community, or Indian American community, uh, understanding the dynamics that of what the parents are facing and what have faced in terms of discrimination what kids face is really important. And your thoughts?
No, I agree with you. I think you summed up pretty much the entire points that I was also thinking about. I think it is important for that. One of the main reasons there is a disconnect between the immigrant coming from India, Indian American population, and the Indian Americans born in America is that there are different understandings of what discrimination is, and there are different thresholds of what discrimination is. And what was the common thing in this whole thread was that there is skin color based discrimination that runs across the entire society in America, and at least it's perceived to run across the entire society in America, and it's more pronounced when somebody is young. So is the one on the basis of religion. I think those are the 2 points that stand out in this.
Hey, so that let me show you this. And again, leave caste aside for just a second. What are the sources of discrimination? And you can see the sources of discrimination, for most part, is non-Indian. But to me, what is interesting is that in some cases, like gender, actually, um, a significant portion. I mean, and gender is kind of interesting because gender discrimination, according to the survey participants, is coming from both non-Indians and other Indians. Sorry, rather from both or non-Indians. So that is not surprising. Um, so I think
So this is heartening, actually. So for all those leftist professors and academicians who run their mouth incessantly morning till night, claiming there is male chauvinism, and what are the other buzzwords they use, Brahminical male tyranny, blah blah blah. It seems like in terms of perception, common people believe that far more number of people of non-Indian origin discriminate on the basis of gender than people of Indian origin. So there goes the crazy nutty leftist woke academia's male chauvinism narrative against Indian men.
although the no, actually, I don't know, so that if you're reading that right, because actually, if you look at both and non-Indian, non-Indian is 39%, but both is 43%. So the majority is all it could be non-Indians, right? You can club them together. So either you have to combine both and non-Indian in the same category. Only Indian is only 19%. So you can combine it either way and it becomes a majority. So you can say 19% plus 39%, or you can say 43% and 39%. Regardless, I think it is.
No,
But it is
why
a
would
very
I
common
add
problem.
19 plus percent plus 39%? They are opposites of each other. I would add 39 plus 43 or 19 plus 43. But in either case, because of the 39 factor, I think that the percentage of perception is that the non-Indians are more than twice likely to discriminate on the basis of gender than Indians. which is the point I'm trying to make to our friends in the woke world, that yeah, obviously there is discrimination on the basis of gender, no doubt about it, but twice the number of non-Indians are likely to discriminate on the basis of gender than Indians. So that is actually quite a slap on the face of the wokes.
Yeah, that's true. I agree. Well, so now let's go back and look at the survey from the caste perspective, because as right now, and let's just to set a stage or here. So for people who have been listening to us for a while, they know that the caste in America issue has been taking, uh, has been building up for last few years. It started with the formation of Equality Lab, and before that, actually, it started with several of the academic publications related to caste in America. Then Equality Lab was formed a few years ago, and they made a concerted effort in order to gain traction on this issue in America. They were successful at in going to Brandeis University and getting caste discrimination as explicitly they were successful in getting caste discrimination categorized explicitly at Brandeis University. And then they moved on. Once they had that, then they did survey on caste in America a couple of years ago, and a completely non-scientific survey. And we'll talk about it. We have some slides on that. And that survey, a self-serving survey, which showed that caste is the biggest narrative in America among the Hindus, and caste discrimination is rampant in America, and all of that. And then they took that completely bogus survey, and they went to Cisco, and they used that as the basis of a lawsuit in Cisco filed by one individual against another individual over there. They took that, and then they went to Cal State University, and they had Cal State University student government, not the whole university system, but the student government categorize caste as recommend to the university administration that caste be considered a protected class, which is a technical legal term, giving an easy way to sue someone on the basis of caste discrimination. And then they took the Cal State University, Brandeis, and Cisco experience to Santa Clara County Human Rights Commission. And Santa Clara County, as you know, is the heart of Silicon Valley. So now this narrative becomes really important, because once you attack the place where the Hindus have achieved the most, the Santa Clara County, that means you're going right at the heart of Hindu achievement over there. And you're saying that all this is built on the top of Hindu achievement. They segue from there, they take the same narrative, and they try to attack the Swaminarayan Mandir, and saying that this entire Swaminarayan Mandir is being built on the basis of discriminating against people of certain castes, right? So this is the narrative that is being built in America. And so in that context, when you look at this survey, and let me share my screen and show you the survey results and get your opinion on that. So that here is the survey result. Let me start from the beginning, and you can see this slide. You can see that this is the survey of only people who the caste number here is only for people who have agreed to answer the caste question, right? Which is only about half. And even among the half, only 5% have said that they have felt discriminated on the basis of caste. Then if you go and you can say that, okay, who are these people? And you say, well, 6% are born in US and 5% are foreign born. Remember, this is half of the survey participants who choose to answer the question on caste discrimination. And then if you look at the next part of the survey, here's the interesting part. When they dig deeper into it, 32% say that they have been discriminated against on the basis of caste by other Indians. 34% say they've been discriminated against caste by non-Indians, and 34% say by both. Okay. Now this is baffling. It's not just baffling to you and me, so that this is baffling to people who actually did the survey. And they say, well, most people can't even tell what caste the other person is from, even if you're from India, because you may know certain last names or whatever, even how I don't even know how much that is valid. But um, you know, in places where you live, right, your immediate surroundings, that state maybe, or maybe that region. I honestly, so that I can't even tell from the state. I'm from Maharashtra. I cannot look at all the last names and tell you who is what caste. Okay, how is a non-Indian going to even know what caste someone belongs to? Okay, and so this 68% or 34% people who say that, oh, I've been by non-Indians, that seems like a number that is used by people who are maybe from Pakistan, who want to malign Indians or whatever, right? It doesn't seem like a number that is genuine. And this survey, people who did the survey actually note that. The same with both, because both also presumably has a significant number of non-Indians there. And so the people who did the survey actually put this up. They say, how might non-Indians discriminate against Indians on the basis of caste if caste is not a salient category for them? This is a genuine puzzle. One possibility is that a person or persons engaged in caste discrimination could be from other South Asian country, but caste might be a meaningful marker of the status and hold greater salience. Not India, right? Because in India, there are mechanisms to provide preferential treatment for people who have been traditionally discriminated. But in other parts of South Asia, Indian subcontinent, the discrimination against people of certain caste continues. Other possibility is that respondents interpret caste discrimination as standing for other forms of discrimination. And then it goes on to say that given that only 5% of the survey respondents report being victims of caste discrimination, any subgroup analysis must be interpreted with due care given the small sample size involved. So basically, the narrative that Equality Lab has spent last 7 years, Equality Lab and the leftist and the pro-Pakistani people have tried to build through the years, last 10 years in America, is bogus. It has no basis in fact.
So Ajay, if you go back 2 slides that you first showed, the slide on the percentage that shows 5%. So in our entire analysis, we have to look at 3 things. Number one, half of the people don't even know what their caste is. Other half are surveyed, which probably identifies with some kind of caste themselves. Only 5% says that they face caste-based discrimination. So if in the total population that has been surveyed, around 2.5% says that they have faced caste-based discrimination. What is the margin of error of this?
And out of them, 60% of them say that it's by non-Indians.
So the margin of error of this survey falls within the percentage that says that they have faced some form of caste-based discrimination. So it could be they have not faced any caste-based discrimination, or the worst case scenario is nearly 2.5% of the of the people surveyed. This is a significant number of people surveyed in this whole survey. Only 2.5% actually say that they have faced some form of caste-based discrimination from anybody. Not only that, 15% or so say that they have faced religious-based discrimination of from the entire population segment. So what it leaves us with is that far more people have been facing discrimination on the basis of them being Hindus than any discrimination on the basis of any caste, whether Hindus or non-Hindus. And the more important point here is that if you look back at the efforts being made by all this bunch of conglomeration of anti-Hindu groups, including led by Equality Labs, it is basically the tail wagging the dog here. They are trying to make caste into an issue in America because it helps them divide and conquer the Hindu society. If they were actually focused on discrimination, And this is not to Equality Labs. Equality Labs was never interested in discrimination on anybody. It is just a power structure, fault line fishing group. But real people out there behind who are genuinely good, well-meaning people who are getting brainwashed by this bullshit. I think people at Brandeis University, people in California, people, in Santa Clara County's Human Rights Commission, any place where this issue has been brought up, they need to be shown this survey, and they need to see that if you really care about discrimination that people of Indian origin face, it is on the fact that they are Hindus, and it is on the fact that their skin color is dark, which is what this survey is kind of pointing out, than anything else even relevant. I mean, caste is probably the least relevant of all the categories in this survey, that this survey shows. So I think if there is any takeaway from this conversation, and we are going to probably continue this in future, it is that of all the causes of discrimination that Indian Americans have faced in America, caste is the least relevant. And in fact, more than half of the people don't even care about what their caste is, or even know what their caste is.
Yeah. And so the bogus survey the Equality Lab did, and here is the comment from this survey on the Equality Lab survey. Okay, it's on footnote number 31. And that is, footnote number 29. And you can see, so this is the caste survey that they refer to, caste in the United States. It's a 2018 survey by Equality Labs. And it says that the study relied on a non-representative snowball sampling method to recruit respondents. Furthermore, the respondents who did not disclose a caste identity were dropped from the data set. Therefore, it is likely that the sample does not fully represent the South Asian American population and could skew in favor of those who have strong views about caste. While the existence of caste discrimination in India is incontrovertible, its precise extent and intensity in the United States can be contested. This is a very nice, polite academic way of saying that this survey is total.
Yeah, so it is
falsehood.
Carnegie's and UPenn's and Johns Hopkins' way of saying that this caste survey by Equality Labs is bullshit. There, to say it can be contested is like, there could have been a better language that Cambridge University or Oxford University could have put out, but I think by American standards, this translates into you guys are bullshit to Equality Labs.
So
I think I think this is one thing that we have to really work with on this, is that we need to really use this very beautifully worded end line from the survey and share it with academicians in California, especially the ones who have been going on and on and on about this purported caste survey that Equality Labs did, and that has been used very successfully. I mean, there has never been untruth used to this extent of success that Equality Labs survey has been used in the recent past. And we should really, I mean, this is a message to every Hindu American organization out there and Indian Americans who care, or even Americans who care, that this survey needs to be taken seriously, and its conclusions need to be shared to once and for all come take it apart, take this whole caste narrative apart, because that narrative is a false narrative that has been brought up by Equality Labs with really powerful forces behind them to target the Hindu American community.
Absolutely. And so that let me show you this other part, because one of the things that Equality Lab has tried to promote, if you look at their report, and if you hear their their presentations at the Santa Clara Human Rights Commission of the Santa Clara County or the Cal State University, one of the things they've said is that the caste privileged people have benefited from their networks, social networks. And if you remember, Ajanta Subramanian, who is a professor at Harvard, said that even among the poor, the people of higher so-called higher caste benefit because they have these strong networks and they pull them each other out and things like that, right? So that this particular survey talked about the composition of social networks among among Hindus in America. So I'm going to put that slide up, and I'm going to have you opine on this particular slide on the social networks uh, among the Indian Americans. Utsada, I'll present this to you for your comments among your friends, and you can see that a very small number, um, actually the same number almost within the margin of error of people say that they have the social networks within the same caste as people they say they don't even know, and or people who say none or hardly of them, right? So I think um, even the religious networks, uh, you can argue that people hang around with the religious, people of their same religion a lot more, which is natural because a lot of the you know life experiences of people of Indian subcontinent origin revolve around religion. I mean, that whether you're Christians or Muslims or Hindus or Parsis or Sikhs or Jains, you a lot of your social life is centered around religion. So it is not surprising that 48% of the people have people who are friends mostly from the same religious community, and this nothing to do with one religion or the other. uh, but if you look at the caste, you can say you can see that only 21% only 21% say that my friends are from the same caste as me, which is the same as 23% within margin of error. They say that hardly a few people or none are from the same caste as I am. 24% don't even care.
Don't even
So if
care.
you add the two numbers up, we are talking about, 47% either they don't hang around with the people of their same caste, or they don't even know who the caste of the other person is.
Compare
And
that,
then,
compare that to nearly 80%, 85% of people who are definitely hanging around with people from the same religion, and another 70% or so hanging around with people from the same linguistic group, which is the same region. So I think, this whole crap that the anti-Hindu narrative builders presented on, caste being a defining factor of social mobility and networking in America, amongst Indian Americans, or amongst people of quote unquote Indian, South Asian, Indian subcontinent origin. uh, it is again a lie. It is again one of the least statistically relevant data point, whereas both religion and linguistics play a far more significant role in social networking within Indian American communities. So, if you sum up this conversation that we have, and the survey data that we have come up with, I think of all the factors that create differences within the Indian American communities in America, caste is the least relevant.
yeah,
And
and
that is
so that
actually exactly opposite to what
of what
the
equality lab
anti-Hindu
is trying to
narrative
promote.
builders are trying to build up.
Hey, Utsada, there is, note two things here, okay, of statistical significance. First of all, even in this number where it says I hang around with my social network is people of the same caste, 79% of the people in some way or the other say no. But if you look at the footnote here where it says, sample excludes respondents who skip the questions and those who did not indicate having um, any Indian friends. Figure excludes respondents who selected don't know. And you remember a significant number of people said, I don't even know about the caste. What is it?
50%,
50%?
yeah, 50%. So basically,
50%.
this
So now
the case
it is
data
the
you can half.
80% or 50% who don't care.
Right.
So
So
that
basically, you
means
can half the 21% and the 31% here and make it. It is actually 10% in real data.
it's actually 10%.
Yes.
And even so, only 10% of the people rely on people of the same caste social network. And there goes Ajanta Subramanian's argument that people of certain caste benefit from social network.
See, but the way these people, whether it is so the anti-Hindu narrative builders, especially in the academia, the way they build up their whole argument, they actually do not believe in data when it doesn't work for them. The response you will get from them is that even if 1% has been discriminated on the basis of caste, we need to bring caste as a protected category, because the next narrative that they will come up with is it's not relevant. Statistics is not relevant anymore. Until they were peddling their fake statistics, they were okay with it. The moment they have been proved wrong, and in fact, it has been proved that it is quite the opposite of what they're trying to say, they will throw the statistics away and they will go to the next point, which is the emotional point, which is to say, even if this person has been discriminated, then it is a relevant cause. So expect that next from this cabal, and we'll have to deal with that, because when was truth relevant to these people?
So that I will make this statement that even one person being discriminated is one too many, but to malign an entire community because one person was discriminated by one other person uh, is really smacks of this political vendetta. And more than political vendetta, it is a religious vendetta that people have against Hindus. Okay. So it is not a question of one person discriminated. None of us, I think, will sit here or anywhere and say one person should be discriminated and that's okay.
Absolutely, agreed.
It is that do not take that as a stick to beat up Hindus, and and that is what is happening
especially
here.
Given the fact that 3 times the number of people have actually faced discrimination on the basis of being Hindus. So if that those 3 times the number of people are also 1% plus 1% plus 1% plus 1%. So that's the point that I'm trying to make here.
Exactly. Yep. So I have some comments here that that I want to read. And I don't know if these people are still listening, but South Florida Hindu Temple, someone logging in from there said, "Thank you for continuing the discussion of interesting and timely topics in HinduLounge." Mahendra Sapaji has said, US-born raised Hindu American kids have zero knowledge on casteism, so there's no way for them to discriminate anyone. This manufactured issue is to defame Hindu Dharma and embarrass our second generation. And then Rashmi Sinhaji has just kind of checked in and says, Namaste, so Namaste Rashmi ji to you. So I think, I think this discussion, we are at a point where we have to say that we will continue this discussion next week. But because this is, this is a really good survey, and there's a lot of learnings that we can have, about Hindu identity, about Indian identity, and quite a few. There are quite a few questions here about the about the religious. How many people consider themselves Hindu? How many go to mandir to or any other religious place to worship? All of these questions are very interesting and worth exploration. So Utsada, why don't we, if you're okay, why don't we defer the rest of the questions for the next week and go to our regularly scheduled segments?
Absolutely. I think we are already about 10 minutes over time, so we should try to attend to our regularly weekly segments, and I think that would be a good idea.
So Utsada, as always, the first regularly scheduled segment for us is the Hindu good news of the week. So it's a good news that starts with somewhat of bad news. So the bad news here, Utsada, is that Karnataka government, now Karnataka is a state in India, Karnataka government, which is a BJP government, okay, as with a lot of the states in India, they control the Hindu mandirs and they control the funds that come to Hindu mandirs. And they decided to take the funds that come to Hindu mandirs and pay Muslim clerics from that fund as a monthly stipend. Okay. So that you go to mandir, right? I go to mandir, you go to mandir, we put whatever offering we want to put, whether it's, 25 cents or $1 or $10 or $100. You put that money in there to help the upkeep of the mandir. You put the money in there so that the priest who is working there, who is generally much poorer than the, and has a lot less income than the average income or median income, would get some money, and you will help sustain Hindu Dharma through that mandir. In India, in a lot of states, this money goes to state coffers. And Karnataka government, the so-called pro-Hindu, pro-Hindutva government in Karnataka, decides to take this money and gives a stipend to Muslim, imams. If this is not taking Hindus for granted, if it's not abuse, if this is not, uh, you know, the one of the most anti-Hindu acts that one can perform. Now, this happens in a lot of places, but Karnataka, with under the BJP government, okay, what can be more anti-Hindu? So the VHP, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad in Bharat, took this issue up. They protested, and they finally had the Karnataka government back down. So how does this happen in a secular country where Hindu funds are used without any consequences to pay people who have no interest of Hindus in mind? So that is mind-boggling.
That wasn't me screaming, but that was very interesting. Well, I that was me screaming in my inside. Well, Ajay bhai, India, and it can only happen in India, and it can only happen in India because Hindus are in majority in India. It will stop happening in parts of India where Hindus are not in majority, as you can see in places where they are not in majority. Hindus are taken for granted, not just in India, but everywhere else in the world. But I think the fact that VHP India did raise this issue and were able to convince the Karnataka government in India to take back their decision shows that there is growing awareness, shows that there is growing influence of the Hindu community. And hopefully, that's why this is a good news, but hopefully this will continue in other places. And, it's encouraging to see that Hindus are standing up for themselves, for what actually should not have happened in the first place. It happens because, Hindus are really good, soft-natured people who do not raise their voice.
So kudos to VHP in Bharat. I think they deserve this.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next segment that we have is our Seva Hindu Seva Act of the Week. And this is still, we are still kind of recovering from COVID, but let's first play the music. So the Hindu Seva Act of the Week, as with last 4 weeks that we have been doing, is the fundraising efforts for COVID-19 in India by our own organization, World Hindu Council of America, or VHPA. We continue to provide oxygen concentrators. We continue to provide pulse oximeters. We continue to provide the support for ecologically sustainable cremation. Please go to bhpamerica.org, click on the donate button, and make your contribution. This is a really worthy cause. VHP America has raised close to $1.7 million and sent it to India now. And please go to our website and make your contribution. Do best you can. We can use every dollar that we get. We have very, very low overhead. And all the money that you donate goes directly to for the cause that you are supporting. Please support fundraising for COVID-19 efforts in India. Go to bhpamerica.org, click on the donate button, and make your contribution. And finally, Utsada, we come to our most anticipated segment, and this is, Utsada, I know you originally come from Bengal, and East Bengal and West Bengal are both going through some really difficult times. I don't know if this is this is the beginning of the things to come. I know that it went through very tough time in 1940s during the partition of India in 1971 when Bangladesh war took place, independence war took place, and it seems like we are now seeing the upswing of anti-Hindu violence in Bengal, both east and west. And you have picked, Utsada, a incident that happened in Bengal. So, Utsada, why don't you talk about this? And this is from Bangladesh.
Correct. So Ajay bhai, as you know, if you look at the last 100 years of the history of the Indian subcontinent, if there has been one part of the subcontinent where Hindus have consistently faced organized genocidal actions over the last 100 years, almost every generation in some form or the other, organized pogroms every generation, then it is Bengal. It started in 1905, and almost every 20, 30 years, it faces a major violent, cataclysmic violent event which targets the Hindu community. It has been literally been consistently played around again and again every 30 years. And, the worst of it was in 1971 when more than nearly 3 million Bengali Hindus were killed. So one single event itself probably has been the most cataclysmic event for the entire Hindu community in terms of scale in the last 100 years would be 1971. So that is, I'm bringing this up to show and highlight the criticality of this particular part of the Indian subcontinent when it comes to Hindu lives and Hindu populations. So that, having that in mind, to this week's Hindu Hater of the Week comes from Bangladesh. In Bangladesh on the 6th of June, on the 9th of June, Rabindra Chandra Das, who is a local level politician in Noakhali district, the infamous Noakhali district of Bangladesh, where in 1947 thousands of Hindus were killed and forcibly converted to Islam. In that area, Rabindra Chandra Das on the 9th of June was killed by local radical Islamists, and that was a murder. And I think every week in Bangladesh, such actions happen against the Hindu community, including prominent members of the Hindu community who are politically relevant. Forget the average population. So, and it is something that has been is so much part of the Islamized narrative of the population of Bangladesh now, because the radicalism is spreading very fast there, despite any effort and all the effort that governments are trying to make. So the people who committed this act of killing Rabindra Chandra Das are the Hindu phobes of the week. And, this is a conversation that, again, we must have and continue. And as American Hindus must look at all the time and act against.
So that it is really, I always feel like that this is, this is a state which gave us, the revolutionaries. It gave us Vande Mataram and Bankim Chandra, and look where how does and we should do a much more deeper exploration of this. How did it come to this state, and how did this transition take place over a period of last 100 years? But from being a state in many ways that was a trendsetter for a lot of the not just the Hindu reforms, but also the in some ways the Hindutva movement, right? With with Anand Math as a novel, and things like that. And now you see an election takes place and a particular party doesn't win. That means you have to attack Hindus. Or in a place where like Bangladesh, where despite of the government doing whatever it can, Hindus are getting killed all the time. So that's a very sad commentary in the state of Bengal, both in the state of Bengal and in Bangladesh. So
absolutely.
And so with that, we say thank you to everyone for tuning in and listening. And we say namaste to Maya Durga for joining us today. I think
Namaskar.
she's all fresh and ready to go somewhere. So we won't
Yes.
hold her up. So namaste, Maya Durga.
Namaste and namaste to all our viewers. And Maya is all ready to go out today, and
All right.
we will see you again next
So
week.
so that and I want to close out by just playing this special music that comes to us from Decibels. It's a wonderful, wonderful tune. As everyone knows, they make music just for us and just for this particular episode. It's a custom music and they put a lot of effort in. So I want to thank Decibels for the contribution that they are making to this show week in and week out by playing this awesome, awesome music that they've created. And I think when Maya heard this music, she was dancing to the tune of this music. So, Maya, this music, once again, for you, there we go. So, this is our outgoing music again from Decibels. Maya, you like the music?
Maya is having a fun time with the music.
All right, Utsoda. So, I'll turn, thank you again, and we'll see you
See
next
you
week.
all next week.
And the music, let the music play.